Thursday, February 14th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning, I want to talk about FASB 56, the missing 21 trillion, right? These are subjects that have been covered thoroughly by Catherine Austin Fitts. She's been on many interviews on the USA Watchdog with Greg Hunter. She's explained very well what's going on, in my opinion. I haven't spoken too much about it, but I've done quite a bit of research in the last few days. Don't take my word for it. Do your research yourself. I'll leave a few links below in the description. The best article about FASB 56 is in the Solari report. It's entitled Caveat Emptor: Why Investors Need to Do Due Diligence on U.S. Treasury and Related Securities. Very long piece, but if you really want to know what's going on, I highly recommend you do your homework as well. So why am I talking about this now? Well, after going through all the details of FASB 56, and I had known about this since Catherine Austin Fitts warned people about it over a year ago, I've come to realize that maybe this is why the repo market is under pressure, and I'll give you my opinion on that today. Before I start on these subjects, first I just wanted to go and look at Catherine Austin Fitts' background, right? Let's have a look here. Catherine Austin Fitts is president of Solari Inc., the publisher of the Solari Report, and managing member of Solari Investment Advisors Service LLC. Fitts served as managing director and member of the board of directors of the Wall Street investment bank Dillon Read & Co. while they were bought out by UBS, right? And I think it was Thomas Dillon, I'm not sure. He was one of the secretaries of the Treasury under Reagan, maybe Bush Senior, I'm not too sure. And she was also Assistant Secretary of Housing, Federal Housing Commissioner of the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in the administration or George Herbert Walker Bush. I think she managed over $300 billion in funds for HUD. So she's not a conspiracy theorist. She knows what she's talking about, and she's done a lot of homework on this. And before I go further, I just want to give you a couple of videos that I think would be interesting for you to watch in relation to what's going on in the Treasury, Congress, the budget for all the federal agencies. One of them was with Greg Hunter, of course, in USA Watchdog in January. It's entitled Catherine Austin Fitts: Federal Government Running Secret Open Bailout. The other one is more recent, and it's from the Solari Report, which is her YouTube channel from October. And it's talking about a new hashtag that they've come up with. It's called hashtag My212020. It's about trying to get the message out there of these missing 21 trillion in the mainstream for the election. So you will see what she thinks about what's going on in terms of Trump and the deep state in the Greg Hunter interview. Basically, she thinks the swamp is so deep, it's so huge, so powerful, it's very difficult for one man to beat the swamp. That's why she thinks it needs to come from the bottom up. What does she say about Trump? Well, she thinks he's doing a lot of things that he promised, but it's very hard for him on his own to fight these people, right? So that's her view. I kind of agree with her view. Maybe that's why it's so confusing to figure Trump out, right? FASB 56. So I'll just go through the introduction here of this very long article, which I've gone through so you can have an idea what it is. And I'll read from it. Investors have experienced challenging times since the change in U.S. presidential administration in 2017 initiated a period of reverse globalization with continuous changes in tax, trade, and other U.S. federal policies. Unnoticed in the fray is the October 2018 adoption by the U.S. Congress and administration of an obscure federal accounting policy that signifies the most important change in the balance of power between the public and private sectors, between overt and covert operations, and between the democratic and fascistic aspects of the American political system. Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board Statement of Financial Standards 56, or FASB-56, or Statement 56, as she says. In simple terms, FASB-56 claims to override the last 230 years of U.S. Constitution and financial management laws and accounting conventions established by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. The policy allows approximately 170 federal reporting entities to shift amounts from line item to line item and sometimes even omit spending entries altogether in their financial statements if national security, there you go, national security excuse, right? Purposes make it necessary to avoid revealing classified information. Essentially, the federal government has adopted an accounting and public reporting policy that allows a small group of unelected individuals with security clearances and need to know access to information to engage in secret processes to establish and maintain separate sets of classified secret books in most federal agencies and component entities. It also allows members of this group to purge from the publicly available financial statements anything the group deems to be worthy of national security protection. With the implementation of FASB 56, when added to existing disclosure exemptions for national security and classified information that apply to the U.S. Treasury, federal agencies, banks, and companies doing business with the federal government and making market in their securities, the greater part of the U.S. securities market has now effectively gone dark. This development, taken together with the growth of index funds, means that almost no one is watching the store. I'm going to stop it here right now, and then I'll come to another section that I want to talk about. But all this means is that, yes, U.S. Treasuries, related securities, that means government-sponsored entity securities like mortgage-backed securities and others. And why is that important for the repo market? Well, because these securities are used as collateral for the repo market. The repo market is a market where the major Wall Street banks, the shadow banking institutions like private equity, mutual funds, hedge funds, and others, that's where they finance their operations, and they use these so-called safe haven securities like U.S. Treasuries, which are supposedly very safe. They use these as collateral to lend cash to other counterparties, and they do that mostly overnight. That's the overnight repo. They do the term repos as well. So I've been thinking maybe, yes, it could partly be the financial institutions that are in trouble, but could it be that people are waking up to this and actually realizing that the collateral that's been used to, how can I say, lend the cash in the repo market is also compromised by FASB 56. The other point she makes is that you can't trust the rating agencies anymore, like S&P, Fitch, and Moody's. And I've spoken about this recently of how when S&P downgraded the U.S. Treasury paper, downgraded the United States back in August of 2011, the CEO of S&P had to resign a month later, and then the government and Congress brought a case against S&P, and they had to pay over $1 billion in fines. They didn't bring a case to the other agencies that didn't downgrade the U.S., and they could have, because they were also involved in the kind of activity for which this case was brought against S&P. So, yes, the other thing that I think is important to realize is this FASB-56 is important for foreign investors, right? If they know this is happening in the United States, maybe their faith and confidence in the U.S. Treasury, in the U.S. government is decreasing. Maybe that's why they're getting out of the dollar, the petrodollar, and buying gold, right? If you, when you're lending money to the Treasury, and that's what buying a bond is, right? And you don't know where the money is going, and there's no accountability, is that safe, right? And that should be the same for any investor. She says you need to do your due diligence. It doesn't cut it anymore just to have the assurance that it's the U.S. Treasury and that the rating agencies are behind these securities, right? The interesting part she talks about as well, it's on Section 5, Part 6. The final version of FASB-56 was made available to the public on October 4th, 2018, the date that the FBI report on its investigation of Justice Brett Kavanaugh took up the public's attention, and is largely unchanged from the exposure draft, upon which comments were received from various federal agencies and accounting firms. In a piece on FASB-56 for Rolling Stone, Has the Government Legalized Secret Defense Spending?, Matt Taibbi captured the timing well in his subtitle, While a Noisy Supreme Court Fight Captivated America Last Fall, an obscure federal accounting body quietly approved a system of classified money moving because the adoption of FASB-56 required the approval of both sides of the aisle in Congress and the White House. The intimate bipartisan cooperation on the adoption of FASB-56 contradicts the divisiveness portrayed during this period by the media. While the initial distribution of the exposure draft was wide within the accounting community and Congress, and it appeared in the Federal Register, it garnered no attention from mainstream press that we have been able to identify. The final version of FASB-56 does not differ greatly from the exposure draft. So there you go. The other point she makes about the missing 21 trillion is that it's all probably offshore, of course. And by offshore, here's the thing. The assets are not offshore. They are legally held by offshore entities, right? And I recommend the Spider's Web, the Secret British Financial Empire video. All it means is that the owners are offshore, right? Through trusts and shell companies in these offshore tax havens. The assets, though, are in the United States, in the UK, right? But it's held offshore. And that's how she thinks they hide it. And I think they do that too. I've thought about that, and I've spoken about that as well. The only way to get to the bottom of this, of course, is to do an audit of the Federal Reserve, because all these funds, when they go offshore, they go through the Federal Reserve. But I wouldn't hold my breath for that audit, though. Apart from the missing 21 trillion, which is pretty bad already, this FASB-56 standard could be what's putting pressure on the repo market, could be what's putting pressure on the plumbing of Wall Street, right? That's my opinion. So now let's look at what the markets are doing this morning. It's just before 8:30 a.m. London time. Yesterday was very similar to the day before yesterday. We saw the stock market come off overnight in the futures market, and then the US came in and the stock market rallied, right? Yesterday, the Dow managed to finish up 92 points. I think it was down over 100 in the futures market. S&P finished up only 2 points, and the NASDAQ was actually down a little bit. So right now, we've got gold. Seems to be holding up well the last few days, in that it hasn't gone down further, and that it's trying to pick itself back up a little bit. We're at $14.68 right now, up just under $5, right near the highs. The low has been $14.61. Silver's back up above $17, is up 5 cents, $17.01. Range has been $16.88 to $17.03. The Dow is down 16 points at 27,762. S&P is down 2 at 3,091. And the NASDAQ 100 is down 8 at 82.48. Cable or sterling is down 0.1% at 128.40. The euro is unchanged, 110.09. The dollar is down slightly against the yen at 108.67. And the dollar yuan is virtually unchanged, 702.33. Oil is a bit stronger. WTI is up 0.75% at 57.56, and Brent is up also 0.75 at 62.40. I noticed that bond yields have dropped back down almost over 10 basis points from the highs this week, which were around 198, I think. We're now at 184.5. That's down 2.5 basis points. The 10-year yield. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Make sure you hit that little notification bell above to be notified of all my new videos. You can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.